So my name is Sakthi Kumaran. I'm a research associate professor of soil sciences and agronomy at Central State University. My research focuses on soil health and water quality, how we can improve soil health and water quality in the state of Ohio and beyond. Yeah, so what we're looking at here is a soil carbon and nitrogen analyzer. So soil carbon is one of the key metrics that we use to quantify the health of soils. There are several properties that we measure in soil to assess its health, but one of the key properties that we measure in soil is soil carbon. How much carbon is getting sequestered in soil in the form of organic matter. So the organic matter is a critical component of soil that actually improves a lot of other soil properties, such as water holding capacity of different soils, the productivity, the nutrient cycling, soil fertility, and all of that. So that's what we do with this instrument. We're quantifying carbon content in soils. The principle that it works on is we're actually burning up the soil, so to speak. It's called dry combustion, and we're quantifying the evolved carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide gets trapped, and we're looking at the amount of carbon present in our soil samples. For example, like in Ohio, our dominant crop rotation is corn and soy. But we have been pushing for a while now to introduce something called as cover crop, in the crop rotation. So we're focused on improving the adoption of cover crop practices in our soils, in our crop rotation. That way, we're improving the organic matter content in the soils. All of these practices fall under the umbrella of climate smart agricultural practices that improve carbon sequestration in soils. In fact, one of the projects that I'm working on is funded by USDA and NIFA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, that the goal of that project is to promote the adoption of these practices that would improve the health of the soils while also maintaining environmental sustainability, such as improved water quality in our region. The farm kids, when they come here, some of them, when they come here to learn about soils research and water quality research, they're fascinated by what we're finding and what can be done, actually. It's not just, taking the tractor and plowing the field or planting or doing the harvesting, but there's a lot that goes into decision making at every step of the way, from planting to the harvest and even beyond, like after that, post-harvest and everything. So when they come here, in the lab, working for me as a student intern, they're gaining experience, on like the different practices that farmers can adopt to improve the health of the soils and water quality, but also they are trained on advanced, techniques such as, the soil carbon nitrogen analyzer that you're looking at, and there are several other instruments in the lab that they get trained on. One of the focus areas that I have is actually drone-based sensing and remote sensing, using satellite imageries and drone-based sensing to make predictions about carbon sequestered in soils. So some of my students, in fact, I had a student who was from a farm background. She got trained in some of those aspects as well. So our goal is to provide them that training that is needed, that is going to make us, or make them, when they go back, if they ever go back to farming, is use that information and build that knowledge base that is necessary to make informed decisions about different farming practices. The unique thing about Central State University is that we are an undergraduate institution, primarily an undergraduate. We don't have a lot of graduate programs yet. We're building our graduate programs because it's mostly undergraduate students. Their hands-on experience is a lot more than, let's say, at Ohio State University. I'm from Ohio State, and I graduated from Ohio State University, so I know the amount of experience, hands-on experience that students get as an undergraduate student there. But as a graduate student, they are involved in the lab doing all kinds of analysis and all of that. But as an undergrad, the opportunities are very limited here. But at Central State University, because it's primarily an undergraduate institution, you have our students working in the lab every day, right? They can work up to 20 hours a week, and they are involved in every aspect of the lab. For example, my research technician here, Robert Bennett, he is out there collecting water samples or soil samples every other week. So my students are there, going with him to collect water samples and soil samples, how to do grid soil sampling, how to do zone sampling, and all of that. And then bring the samples into the lab. They're the ones who are processing the samples, prepping the samples to be analyzed for carbon, using carbon nitrogen analyzer, or to be analyzed using ICP-OES, which is another instrument that quantifies all of the nutrients that are present in the soil. So they're getting trained, on all of those activities and all of those areas when they work in my lab as a soil researcher or water researcher. We just expanded it to another location in Warren County. And one of the things that we're trying to do there is look at the impact of a practice called cascading waterways, and compare it with grass waterways, and then with control with no waterway at all. So we have 3 fields that are instrumented with what is called as an edge of field monitoring system. So we're collecting water samples on a continual basis as it leaves the field and after a rainfall event, such as we had a couple of days ago, right? We're trying to see if there are nutrients that are running off the field, and how these, especially we're focused on 2 nutrients, right? Non-pond source pollutant, which are nitrogen and phosphorus. In our region, southwestern Ohio, we're more focused on nitrogen. In northwestern Ohio, it's more phosphorus. So we're looking at the nitrogen concentration in the water samples that we'll be collecting using that edge of field automated collection system. The system also has a way to also quantify the flow that is leaving the field. So we're looking at, comparing these practices, cascading waterway and grass waterway, and how they are impacting the retention of nitrogen in the field. We want the farmers to keep the nitrogen that they're applying in the field rather than running it, the nitrogen running off the field after a rainfall event in the form of runoff. So that's our goal. We want to make the farming practice profitable while also making sure that that nitrogen is not leaving the field and end up contaminating the waters, surface waters and drinking water. One of the focus area is for example, the drinking water threshold is 10 ppm for nitrate. And then if we exceed that threshold, then it's going to be harmful for us if we end up consuming drinking water with a greater amount of nitrate concentration. So far, my focus has been on the Great Miami and Little Miami watershed. That's where we have been collecting our soil samples from and the participating farms in our region. But through the new project that we have, which is funded by NIFA, it's called a Sustainable Agricultural Systems Project, and we're working with Ohio State University. The Ohio State University is the lead on that, and we also have Lincoln University from Missouri and University of Missouri part of that project. So we're expanding, the data collection to other parts of the state of Ohio. We're working collaboratively with Ohio State on that. So our soil samples are going to be coming from multiple fields. In fact, we have 7 nodes that we will be establishing, and each node would 5 to 7 nodes, and each node would have about 5 farms, so nearly about 35 farms. Those farms are going to be spread out across the state of Ohio under different systems. We have soil samples that we'll be collecting from prescribed grazing, for example, organic dairy production system, and other conventional systems. So that's an ongoing project. We just started working on that. But so far, my collection has been focused on the Great Miami and Little Miami watershed in southwestern Ohio. Speaking about carbon credits, there is a lot of questions we still that we still have to answer. For example, the permanence of carbon that is getting sequestered in soil through the adoption of any best management practice or climate smart practice, right? To give you an example, if you want to know, the implementation of cover crop into the crop rotation and how much cover crop is sequestering carbon, and which species of cover crop is sequestering carbon the most, and the carbon that is getting sequestered in the soil, is it going to stay there more permanently, or is it going to go back to the atmosphere? So the permanence of the carbon that is getting sequestered, and all of those unanswered questions are something that we have to answer in order to make informed decisions about the different practices' impact on carbon sequestration. So the carbon credit program, although it's very useful and there's a lot of push for adoption of these practices to improve carbon sequestration in soils, but we still have those questions that we have to try and get answers so that we can make informed decisions about where to implement these practices. I would say I'll call it as targeted implementation of these practices. in soils, which soils are going to respond the most when a certain practice is implemented in the field in terms of carbon sequestration. And that information is going to help us even coming up with the informed decisions about carbon credit program itself. Like, one of the key components of carbon credit program is actually monitoring and seeing how much carbon is getting sequestered after implementation of any best management practice. How are we going to do that effectively? One way to do that is to find out about the variability in soils and how carbon can get sequestered in soils through the different management practices. And that is what I'm focused on in my lab, in my research, is looking at the permanence of carbon that is getting sequestered in soils through different agricultural best management practices. And not only in the surface, but also deeper down the soil profile. Usually, if you see, like, when we are collecting soil samples from the field, we're collecting from the top few inches. But what is happening beneath the top few inches that we always collect soil samples from with regards to carbon sequestration? That's something, that we still have to know and find out in order for us to make informed policy decisions about which practices are going to be suitable for where, in the landscape. So I always tell people, like, when you look out through the window and you're looking at soil samples, you may end up, saying, like, well, I think we have some like 5 or 10 different soil types. I always tell people, like, we nearly have about 440 plus soil types in Ohio that we have to understand and know and learn more, about, and how they respond to the different management practices that we adopt or that we are promoting, to adopt. The three pillars of a land-grant institution, one is research, and the other one is teaching, and the third important one is extension. So the purpose of land-grant institution is to, of course, train the next generation of researchers and leaders in science, but also to really support the community, right? The funding is based on the number of farms that we have and a number of people that are being supported. So that's why Central State University exists. That's why The Ohio State University exists as a land-grant institution, is to reach out to the community that we are responsible for. And that's at the top of my priority. As a researcher, I'm focused on working with the communities. For example, my partnerships with the county soil water conservation districts is very deep. I work with Warren County, Montgomery County, and other counties in southwestern Ohio. So all of my research work, I make sure that the findings that I have gets translated into a tool or something that's going to benefit the society that we live in, the community that we live in. So yes, that's one of the key essential component of being a land-grant institution, is that we address the needs of the community that we are part of and that we're tasked with. The reason, I think, there are multiple reasons why they should come to Central State. One I already mentioned, which is the hands-on learning experience that they can gain. The faculty to students ratio is small. In other words, we're personally invested in students' training and education, right? I have a lot of students who come and I know them by name. I know them personally, like, talk to them about, where they're at in their educational journey and guide them. So that's one reason I can think of why they should come to Central State University. But also the opportunities that are available. Central State being a new land-grant institution, there is so much support from USDA for a lot of research and extension activities. Like I said, I mentioned a couple of research projects that I'm involved in. One was the SAS grant, Sustainable Agricultural Systems grant, and the other one is the NextGen, developing NextGen leaders in agricultural research and food and nutritional research. And there's also another project that we just got funded by NASA to look at actually, quantify acoustic signals from plants under stressed environment. So if there is a moisture deficit or nutrient deficit, how can we sense the acoustic signals these plants emit and use that information to make inferences about how stressed that plant is? Can we identify that stress well in advance so that we can intervene even before the plant is actually stressed beyond a certain point where it cannot recover itself from? So those are some of the advanced tools and technologies and research that we're focused on. I think our students, if they come here, they are involved in those research operations directly, and the experiential learning opportunities that they have is tremendous here at Central State University.